I don't know. I kept, I done went to jail and now I done went to prison. I guess
I've had a record, and now it looks like I'm a criminal who has no way of being reformed.
From a star who murdered his wife in cold blood to another star who threw away a glittering career in exchange for drugs, violence, and jail time, Hollywood has proven that even the brightest lights can cast the darkest shadows. Behind the red carpets, million-dollar smiles, and blockbuster movies lies a string of shocking downfalls where stars ended up in prison and talent couldn't save them from handcuffs. These were people adored by millions, with careers that promised longevity, wealth, and cultural immortality. Yet behind closed doors, demons raged. In this video, we will share with you 15 Black Hollywood stars who ended up in jail. Number 15. Robert Sylvester Kelly.
Didn't do this stuff. This is not me. I'm fighting for my life.
Before the prison bars, before the headlines of disgrace, Kelly was a music legend, known globally as R. Kelly, he dominated the 1990s and 2000s with chart-topping hits, multi-platinum albums, and a reputation as the king of R&B. But behind the spotlight, a much darker truth was unfolding, one that ultimately destroyed his reputation. It was in 2019 that everything changed. Federal prosecutors charged him with multiple counts of sex trafficking, racketeering, and child exploitation, pulling back the curtain on a decades-long pattern of abuse.
But I don't like anybody illegal.
The trial was explosive. Survivors bravely stepped forward, their testimonies painting a harrowing picture of manipulation, control, and emotional torment. They spoke of being lured with promises of fame only to be trapped in a web of fear. The judge, echoing his pain, declared that Kelly had used his fame as a weapon carefully designed to exploit the vulnerable and silence the weak. "You left a trail of broken lives," the court said. "You showed no remorse, and for that, justice must be served." In September 2021, R. Kelly was found guilty on 9 federal counts. Crowds outside the courthouse erupted, some celebrating long-awaited justice, others stunned that the man who once sang about love was now condemned as a predator. In June 2022, he was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. Once a king of music, Robert Kelly's legacy now lies in ruins. Number 14. Wesley Snipes.
Me and Prince were auditioning together, and I blew Prince out of the water.
Wesley Snipes was once one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. With breakout roles in New Jack City, White Men Can't Jump, and the blockbuster Blade trilogy, he carved out a space as both a critically respected actor and a box office draw. But behind the glitz and the stardom, trouble was brewing. This time, not from scandalous headlines or violent crimes, but from something deceptively ordinary: taxes. Between 1999 and 2004, Snipes earned tens of millions of dollars but failed to file federal tax returns. The amount owed to the government exceeded $7 million. What might have been resolved quietly turned into a legal spectacle when Snipes adopted radical tax protester theories, insisting he was not legally obligated to pay.
Yeah, you gotta take it in stride, these things are a part of life.
Prosecutors painted him as a man who had willfully ignored the law, while his defense argued that he was misled by unscrupulous advisors and genuinely believed he was acting within his rights. The trial in 2008 became a media storm. Fans couldn't reconcile the image of their beloved action hero with the man accused of defying the IRS. Inside the courtroom, the prosecution stressed that fame did not place anyone above the law. The jury ultimately convicted Snipes on 3 misdemeanor counts of failing to file returns. Despite pleas for leniency, he was handed a 3-year prison sentence. In December 2010, Snipes reported to a federal prison in Pennsylvania, where he served 28 months before his release in 2013. From red carpets to prison gates, Snipes' fall was absolutely dramatic. Number 13. Clifford Joseph Harry.
I incomplete because my parents didn't give me what I needed.
Harry was one of the biggest names in hip-hop. His music, from Rubber Band Man to Live Your Life, made him a superstar. He acted in movies, built businesses, and became a role model for many who admired how he rose from the streets of Atlanta to global fame. But even with all his success, trouble caught up with him, and it landed him in prison. In 2007, just before he was supposed to perform at the BET Hip Hop Awards, federal agents arrested him. The reason shocked fans. He had tried to buy machine guns and silencers. The news spread quickly, and many couldn't believe that someone at the height of fame would take such a risk. During his trial, prosecutors said he was careless and dangerous. T.I. himself admitted that what he did was wrong and foolish. The judge made it clear that his status as a celebrity didn't excuse his actions. In 2009, T.I. was sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in federal prison. He ended up serving 7 months before moving to a halfway house. When he came out, T.I. returned to music and the spotlight, but the experience changed how people saw him. His story became yet another example that no matter how famous you are, the choices you make can still send you from the stage to a prison cell. Number 12. Red Fox.
You know, the guy said, yeah, I'll be out of jail before you get out of the hospital. So.
Red Fox was one of the most important and influential comedians of his generation, but it was his role as Fred G. Sanford in the 1970s sitcom Sanford and Son that made him a legend. Week after week, he had America laughing with his quick wit, his grumpy charm, and his unforgettable catchphrases. He opened doors for many black comedians who came after him, proving that comedy could be bold, raw, and deeply relatable. On screen, Fox seemed unstoppable. He lived life as loudly as he performed, enjoying cars, jewelry, houses, and everything his money could buy. But behind the glamour, Fox was careless with his finances. He trusted the wrong people, failed to keep proper track of his money, and spent as though the good times would last forever. By the late 1980s, the IRS was after him for unpaid taxes that had grown into the millions. In 1989, the trouble reached its peak. IRS agents raided his Las Vegas home, seizing nearly everything: cars, furniture, jewelry, even his house itself. In no distant time, what everyone feared eventually happened. Red Fox was arrested for tax evasion. The man who had made America laugh for decades was suddenly in handcuffs. His fall from grace splashed across newspapers. Fans were heartbroken. Some blamed his reckless spending, others felt sympathy, believing he had been misled by shady managers and accountants. The judge, however, was firm and went ahead to sentence him to jail, although after his prison term, he managed to continue working in the early 1990s. Even starring in a short-lived sitcom called The Royal Family, the damage to his finances and reputation was permanent. Sadly, in 1991, while rehearsing for the show, Red Fox suffered a fatal heart attack at age 68. His story remains tragic. Number 11. Cat Williams.
In order to technically be sane, it requires that your belief system.
Williams is one of the most electric comedians in Hollywood. With his flashy suits, sharp delivery, and unforgettable performances in stand-up specials like The Pimp Chronicles, he made a name for himself as a fearless voice in comedy. He appeared in hit films like Friday After Next and Norbit, carving out a space as both a comedian and an actor. By the mid-2000s, Cat Williams was on top of the world, but just as quickly as fame lifted him up, trouble began to drag him down.
Don't pretend like I wasn't with Drake before it happened.
Yeah.
In 2006, he was arrested at Los Angeles International Airport for carrying a concealed firearm. In the years that followed, the run-ins multiplied. Charges of assault, gun possession, theft, and even child endangerment after police found guns and in his home. Each time, fans hoped it was a misunderstanding or that Williams would bounce back, but the pattern continued. One of the most dramatic moments came in 2016, when Cat was arrested multiple times in the same year, once for attacking a store clerk, another time for fighting a teenager, and again for allegedly hitting someone with a salt shaker at a restaurant. The headlines painted a picture of a comedian spiraling out of control, unable to stay away from chaos. Judges grew less patient with his excuses, and at different points, Williams spent time in jail as his cases piled up. For the public, it was hard to watch. Here was a man with immense talent, someone who could make millions laugh, yet who kept finding himself in handcuffs. Number 10. Gucci Mane.
When I do go to prison, they send me to this, maximum security prison.
Gucci Mane is a name that carries weight in hip-hop. His mixtapes made him a legend, and his hit songs like Freaky Girl and Lemonade gave him mainstream success. But while Gucci's music career was climbing, his personal life was crashing, and the two worlds often collided in public. Gucci had always lived close to trouble. In 2005, his name was tied to a murder case after a shootout in Atlanta. He claimed it was self-defense and the charges were dropped, but the incident created a reputation that followed him everywhere. Over the years, he was arrested again and again for possession, probation violations, and violent outbursts. He became almost as famous for his mugshots as for his music. The breaking point came in 2013. Gucci was spiraling out of control, battling addiction and mental health issues, while also lashing out at other rappers on social media. That September, police found him with 2 loaded firearms. Because he was already a convicted felon, the law was clear. He wasn't supposed to have any at all. The judge had no choice but to hand down a 3-year federal prison sentence. Fans were disappointed, but many weren't surprised. They had watched Gucci's downfall unfolding step by step. Some critics wrote him off completely, believing prison would end his career for good. Number 9. Lil Wayne.
I was in the house. Police knocked on the door. I was right.
Wayne remains one of the biggest rap stars the world has ever seen. But at the peak of his success, Wayne's career hit a dark turn that landed him behind bars. The trouble started in 2007 when police pulled over his tour bus in New York after a performance. Inside, officers found a loaded .40 caliber handgun. Wayne insisted the gun didn't belong to him, but prosecutors pushed forward. Because New York has some of the toughest gun laws in America, the charge was serious: criminal possession of a weapon. In 2009, Lil Wayne stood in court and shocked everyone by pleading guilty. His lawyers explained that fighting the case could have led to a much longer sentence if he lost. By admitting guilt, he accepted a deal: 1 year in Rikers Island jail.
No jail, I just been around
When Wayne finally reported to jail in March 2010, fans around the world couldn't believe it. One of rap's greatest voices was now behind bars. After serving 8 months of his 1-year sentence, Lil Wayne was released in November 2010. But his time in jail remains one of the most traumatic chapters of his life. Number 8. Jerry Harris.
Biggest thing she has taught me is to always plan for everything, because if you plan for...
Harris rose to fame as the breakout star of the Netflix docuseries Cheer. With his big smile, infectious energy, and motivational mat talk, he quickly became a fan favorite, even landing interviews on red carpets and appearances with celebrities. In September 2020, Harris was arrested on federal child pornography charges. Prosecutors accused him of using social media to pressure underage boys into sending him explicit photos and videos. Court documents revealed graphic details that painted a very different picture from the bubbly, smiling star the world had come to know. As the case unfolded, prosecutors called his actions a pattern of abuse and argued that Harris used his fame and influence to exploit vulnerable teenagers. The judge, agreeing that his behavior was serious and harmful, sentenced him in 2022 to 12 years in federal prison, followed by 8 years of supervised release. Number 7. Foxy Brown.
Be hard, and I wanted to get my message across that you can be a lady.
She was one of the most powerful female voices in hip-hop during the late 1990s and early 2000s. With her sharp lyrics, bold personality, and unforgettable collaborations with stars like Jay-Z and Nas, she carved her place in rap history. But just as her music career was reaching great heights, legal troubles began to overshadow her talent. Her problems with the law started with small incidents, but grew more serious over time. In 2004, Foxy Brown was accused of assaulting 2 nail salon workers in Manhattan after a heated argument. She was arrested and charged, and the case quickly became tabloid news. Instead of moving on from that scandal, she soon faced more charges for probation violations and other altercations. By 2007, things had spiraled further. Foxy was sentenced to 1 year in jail after violating probation that had been given for earlier assault charges. The judge noted that despite repeated chances, she continued to get into trouble. Reports at the time described her as defiant, unwilling to change her behavior even in the face of mounting legal pressure. Her time behind bars at Rikers Island shocked many fans who had grown up admiring her fierce confidence on stage. Number 6. Michael Jace.
I didn't commit first-degree murder. There was no premeditated any.
This guy was best known for playing Officer Julian Lowe on the hit TV show The Shield. For years, audiences saw him as a tough but complicated cop on screen, but in real life, his story turned into one of Hollywood's darkest tragedies. On May 19, 2014, Jace shocked the world when he called 911 himself to report that he had shot his wife, April Jace, in their Los Angeles home. Their 2 young sons were inside the house at the time and witnessed the horrific crime. Prosecutors later revealed that Jace had been angry and jealous because of his wife's relationship with other men, and his rage turned deadly. The trial was heartbreaking. Friends and family of April described her as a loving mother and a woman full of life whose future was stolen in an instant. Prosecutors painted Jace as a man consumed by jealousy and control. His defense claimed he hadn't planned the killing, but the evidence was overwhelming. In 2016, a jury found Michael Jace guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced him to 40 years to life in prison, a punishment that made clear the seriousness of his crime. Number 5. Mystical.
I had to sit in front of and look at 6 years elapse off that shit.
Mystical was once a rising force in hip-hop. Known for his raspy voice, fiery delivery, and hits like Shake Ya Ass, he earned fame in the early 2000s as part of Master P's No Limit Records. But while his music career brought him success, his personal life became filled with legal troubles that would overshadow his talent. In 2003, Mystical's career came to a halt when he was accused of assault. Prosecutors said he and 2 bodyguards forced his hairstylist to perform sexual acts, and a videotape of the incident was found. Mystical admitted guilt, and in 2004 was sentenced to 6 years in prison. The news shocked the hip-hop world, as one of its brightest stars was suddenly behind bars for a crime that stunned his fans. After serving his sentence, Mystical tried to restart his career, but trouble seemed to follow him. In 2012, he was jailed again for a probation violation. Mystical's story became one of wasted potential. Judges and prosecutors often described him as someone given chances but unable to stay away from crime. Number 4, Ja Rule.
It all just happened so crazy, so fast, you know, like.
With hits like Always on Time, Livin' It Up, and Mesmerize, he dominated the charts and created unforgettable collaborations with artists like Ashanti and Jennifer Lopez. In 2007, Ja Rule's career took a major hit when police pulled him over in New York City after a concert. Officers found a loaded, semi-automatic handgun in his car. Because New York has some of the toughest gun laws in America, the charge carried a mandatory sentence. After a long legal process, Ja Rule pleaded guilty to attempted criminal possession of a weapon. In 2011, the judge sentenced him to 2 years in prison. As if that wasn't enough, around the same time, prosecutors revealed he had failed to pay taxes on millions of dollars of income between 2004 and 2006. That added more time to his sentence, leaving him to serve both concurrently. While locked up, Ja Rule he used the time to reflect, read, and even earned his GED before getting released. Number 3, Chris Brown.
A humbling experience. It was definitely one of the things I'll never forget.
With smooth vocals, electrifying dance moves, and hits like Run It and Forever, Brown quickly became one of R&B's brightest stars. He had the looks, the talent, and the world at his feet. But in 2009, his career took a dark turn. That year, Brown was arrested for assaulting his then-girlfriend, pop superstar Rihanna. The shocking details of the case: Ja Rule was also convicted of tax evasion spread across the world, and fans were stunned. Brown pleaded guilty and was sentenced to probation, community service, and counseling. But trouble didn't stop there. Over the next few years, Brown's name kept reappearing in headlines for violent outbursts and clashes with the law. His probation was often at risk, and judges repeatedly warned him to stay in line. In 2014, things came to a breaking point when he was kicked out of a court-ordered rehab facility for breaking the rules. That move automatically violated his probation. The judge ruled that Brown had failed to follow the conditions of his release and sentenced him to 131 days in jail. Number 2, Isaiah Washington.
What?
With powerful performances in films like Crooklyn, Clockers, and Get on the Bus, Washington built a reputation as a serious and talented actor. His career reached new heights in the early 2000s when he was cast as Dr. Preston Burke on Grey's Anatomy, one of the most popular TV dramas of its time. But behind the fame, Isaiah Washington's journey was not without controversy and personal struggles, some of which led him into trouble with the law. Long before his success on Grey's Anatomy, Washington had brushes with the legal system. In his younger years, he faced arrests that included charges like assault and disturbing the peace. Though many of these incidents were not widely publicized at the time, they painted the picture of a fiery personality who often clashed with authority. Later in life, his name became tied more to scandal than to talent. After being fired from Grey's Anatomy for a homophobic slur directed at a castmate, Washington's reputation suffered. While his jail stints were not as long or dramatic as other Hollywood stars, his past arrests became part of the narrative used to portray him as difficult in the industry. Judges and critics often described him as brilliant but troubled, a man whose temper repeatedly brought him into conflict with others. Number 1, Tupac Shakur.
The time all the kids in my school was writing applications to go to college, I didn't have no lights and no electricity. And that ain't my mama's fault.
Tupac was more than a rapper. He was a voice for the streets and a poet who captured the struggles of a generation. But while his music shined, Tupac's personal life was filled with chaos, violence, and legal troubles that eventually landed him behind bars. In 1993, Tupac was accused of assaulting a woman in a New York hotel room. He strongly denied the charges, saying the encounter was consensual, but prosecutors painted a darker picture. The trial gained national attention, with fans divided and the media closely watching every detail. In 1994, he was convicted of first-degree, though acquitted of more serious charges. Just a day before his sentencing, Tupac was shot 5 times in a robbery at a recording studio in Manhattan, an attack that fueled his paranoia and the East Coast-West Coast rap feud. Despite his injuries, the court pressed forward. In 1995, Tupac was sentenced to 1.5 to 4.5 years in prison. While serving time in a maximum security prison, Tupac continued to write music and even released Me Against the World, which debuted at #1 on the Billboard charts, making him the first artist to top the charts while incarcerated. Let's know your thoughts in the comments section. Subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Like and share.